I'm joined now by House Speaker Emerita Nancy Pelosi, Congresswoman from California. Good to have you on, Congresswoman.
My pleasure. Thank you.
You're someone who spent a lifetime in politics from the time that your father was the mayor of Baltimore. So you understand the way that political incentives work. When you look at what has happened in the Republican Party, when you look at something like last night where these 3 state senators had stood in the way of this ban, they get primaried, they lose. What does that do to the way that Republicans understand what they have to do and what they will do about abortion, no matter what messaging they're going to say on, say, a debate stage?
Well, thank you very much for your question. It's good to be here as we observe the 2-year anniversary of the Dobbs decision. And I can tell you that this week we've had a drumbeat across America of events all over talking about how we have to reverse that decision with law by winning the election and enshrining Roe v. Wade in the law of the land. And also how people see it as a kitchen table issue. This is an economic issue for families, the size and timing of their families, or if they're going to have a family. It's a freedom issue. It's a democracy issue. It's about freedom for women to make their own choices. So when you see that election in North Carolina last night, it was heartbreaking. Those women were courageous. They went out and said what they believed, and that was rejected by the voters. But we have to make sure that the voters know. And one thing they will know is the difference between Joe Biden and the former president of the United States. If the other guy wins, there will be no question there will be a national abortion ban in our country. I say that very sadly as a Roman Catholic, as a person who had 5 children in 6 years in 1 week. Very wonderful, a joy to us. That was our choice. Other people should have their choice. So this tomorrow night, you'll see a split screen on the subject of respect for women. You'll see a split screen on their economic life. And the list goes on that we can talk about, but to stick with Dobbs for a moment. One of the things that we were observing this week as we had our drumbeat across America was access to contraception. How many Republicans do you think in the House of Representatives voted for a woman to have the right to contraception? 8. 195 Republicans voted no. Women do not have a right to contraception. We're not talking abortion here. We're talking contraception. So this is about, they believe in, they don't believe in birth control, but they do believe in controlling women. So the women have to recognize, and that, as I say, that election last night told me that not enough people were paying sufficient attention to what it was at stake and what it meant to those women, to their families, for their children and the rest, for them to have an economic issue, a freedom issue, a personal choice issue, just pulled away from them in that way. And if he wins, well, it can't win. I mean, it cannot happen.
Well, he might. But it can happen.
Understand this.
I hate to tell you, we went through it once.
It doesn't. It makes sure it doesn't for a lot of reasons. One of them is that there will be an abortion ban in our country. That's a guarantee.
Let me ask you a follow-up. But by the way, my mind is still running the math on 5 children in 6 years in 1 week, which is, I guess I knew as an abstract fact about your life, but wow, that's incredible. There are 2 things they say. One is Trump says no national ban. Well, I'm not going to do a national ban. And 2. And this, I think, gets to something you're saying here, and I was just mentioning it before. When you poll folks, there's maybe 20% of voters who don't even realize that it was Donald Trump's Supreme Court that took away Roe v. Wade. I mean, there's something like 15 to 20% of voters that think Joe Biden is responsible for the overturning of Roe.
Well, that's so interesting because he takes great pride in the fact that he packed the court against the women. Yeah. And Mitch McConnell was his accomplice in all of that. Pack the court against women. Going out there, taking great pride of it in certain audiences and in other audiences saying, I'm not going to do a ban. And then there are other things that are contingent upon this. For example, he says, when you see the split screen tomorrow, in favor of a woman with respect for her ability to make her choices. On the other side, a ban on contraception, a ban on terminating a pregnancy, a ban on your free choice and your liberty. And then you see things that go with it. This is a health issue. He says, and I quote him, and it's crude, but he is, the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare sucks. No, it doesn't suck. It cures. And he says, oh, if you have pre-existing conditions, I'm going to take care of you. No, he wouldn't. The bill he put forth didn't even have anything about pre-existing conditions in it. And if it did, it would be so expensive that forget about it. Forget about it. So then you look at something else. People are concerned about inflation. 16 Nobel laureates came out this week and said that if what's-his-name were elected president with his fiscal policies, inflation would just increase enormously in our country. And you have Joe Biden on the other side of that screen leading the world in reducing inflation in our country. So if you talk of any subject you can talk about, if your young people care so much about another scientific issue, climate, saving the planet. Bozo sat down at the table with fossil fuel industry executives and said, give me $1 billion for my campaign so I can reverse what they have done with the IRA to save the planet. Joe Biden is there, he was the first person in the Congress of the United States way back in the 80s, even before I was there, to introduce a resolution calling for the Senate to address the climate crisis issue.
Let me ask you this question. I think most folks watching this agree about the sharpness of these contrasts. Certainly on these policy areas, I think they're correct, right? There's real choices about health care, abortion rights, the climate, and big oil, even on inflation. I think, why, given how sharp is the contrast, what do you tell yourself when people ask you, as they ask me, how is it so close? What's your answer to that?
Well, I don't think it's going to be so close. And don't forget, we didn't mention guns. There are other issues where the split screen has a very sharp contrast. I'm a big believer. We don't agonize about who says what. We organize. We own the ground. We get out our vote. Joe Biden will be the next president of the United States again. He will be. And Kamala Harris, the vice president. We're very proud of that. And we are organized. I'm going all over the country. I'm a former chair of the party. I came up into all of this being a grassroots organizer to get out the vote on the political side, to get out the vote. I can smell a good campaign or not. And I'm telling you, the scent is there. People are ready. Now, just for example, in the election of 2022, you will recall that the pundits, wherever they are, were saying we were going to lose 30 or 40 seats.
Correct.
They didn't know what they were talking about.
Yeah.
They didn't know what we were going to have a tsunami, was it, or a red wave or some such thing. They had a little eyedropper. We lost 5. We'll get them back. Hakeem Jeffries will be the Speaker of the House. Chuck will be the leader of the majority in the Senate. And Joe Biden will be president of the United States. But back to 22, I kept saying, why are they saying that? And even Democrats were going on TV saying, oh, she's got it all wrong. She's saying a woman's right to choose. Dobbs is a big deal in this election. Yes, it was. They said it's all in the rearview mirror. Women don't care that much. Yes, they do. Yes, they do. So that's one issue.
Yeah.
And that's a very important issue because it's a freedom issue. It's personal, it's health, it's freedom, it's economic.
And we still have seen in special election after special election, that sort of driving energy that you talk about in 2022 has showed up at the polls in special election after special election. Speaker Emerita Nancy Pelosi, always a pleasure to have you on. Thank you very much for your time tonight.
My pleasure. Thank you. Onward to victory.